Hi, my name is Susanna Barton. I'm the founder of the Grand Plans online community. And today we're here for the second episode of the Grand Plans podcast. Here today with Bonnie Upright, who's talking about viral obituaries and death binders. Very exciting conversation. So make sure you catch it on our YouTube channel at Grand Plans, on Facebook at My Grand Plans, and on Instagram at Grand Plans 2022. Hi there, and welcome to the second episode of Grand Plans. Today we're in a different studio. Got a nice background, and we're at Fifths Productions, meticulous space, so we're so grateful to be here. And today we are talking about viral obituaries and death binders with our very special guest, Bonnie Upright, and she's a wonderful person who's been in the public relations business here in Jacksonville for a long time. So welcome, and tell us a little bit more about your background and how you what you do when you're not going viral, when you're not involved in viral obituaries.
Okay, yes, easy. So, well, thank you for the warm welcome. This is fantastic.
Isn't it great?
It feels very NPR. It feels very, almost like an SNL sketch. If we really wanted to have a little fun, we could do the headphones. And
I could say the funny two words, but
yes,
I'm not going to do
say
it.
that. But people know what we're talking about. But thank you for having me. I was raised in Orange Park, and went away to college and came back. And I've been in the public relations industry for more than a couple of decades now.
Because I feel like when I moved here and I was in the reporting world, you were like the PR maven. It's like everyone knew Bonnie.
I will say this: there probably was a time, but just the nature of what I did, and the type of work that I did. So, I actually started out as a video producer here in town and produced worked on corporate television, videos, some television commercials, Burger King commercials, produced Winn-Dixie weekly commercials.
Oh, Beef People, yes.
Yeah, the Beef People, produced Mark Brunell's TV show, the first season of the Jaguars.
Oh, cool.
And that honestly kind of set me off on my path of working predominantly nonprofit PR. That's where I spent a good bit of my career, helping professional athletes start a foundation, run their foundations, raise money, give back to their communities. And so I had really, my career now is fun. That career, though, was really fun when you're working with NFL players, when you're working with PGA Tour athletes, and you're raising money and you're giving it away. And it was really fantastic. And then, spent a little bit of time at the Times Union as a journalist, as a sports writer. Interesting time, in the mid-90s to be a female in a newsroom, in a sports newsroom.
Back when there was a newsroom, a big newsroom.
There was a newsroom.
Very
a lot
sad.
Of people. There was copy editing. There were photographers.
It's a podcast for another time.
It is the death of
yes,
of
the
that.
death of something else.
There's your death.
Yeah,
there's your death. But really, I love Jacksonville. Live in Orange Park now at Oak Leaf Plantation, and have raised my family here.
Aww.
And again, it's unique when you're in the public relations field. You kind of do know a lot of people,
right?
Just by nature of the gig.
Yeah.
Working with media, working with clients. In my case, having the great fortune to work with some celebrities and some athletes and do some really cool stuff. I had a client on Dancing with the Stars at one time, which was really cool. I've got to do some really amazing things. But at the end of the day, the nonprofit piece and the community piece is what I love the most.
Yeah. Well, I am going to bet that not one of those clients got you the international acclaim as much as your mother's obituary. So let's get into that, about, which is why you're here to talk about this story, which is just it's inspiring and it's just crazy and amazing. So tell us. I know, let's maybe get into a little bit about your mom. And she was ill, and it wasn't too long, I understand, that she was in that situation. But in the meantime, she wrote her own obituary. Is that right?
She did. So I'll set the timeline. So she passed away March 25th, 2015. So late summer, early fall of 2014, she wasn't feeling great. Just didn't feel good. Went to doctors repeatedly, kept talking about pains in her stomach. Nope, you're fine. We can't find anything. No. Ultimately, they told her it was all in her head. They sent her to a psychiatrist because that's an important fact later. And turns out she may have been a little crazy because we all have a little fun and we're all a little eccentric in our own ways.
If you don't have a little bit of that.
So, but it turns out she was initially diagnosed with liver cancer. And once they did some additional testing, they realized it was pancreatic cancer. So she was diagnosed on February 24th, 2015. I happened to be in California because I had that client on Dancing with the Stars. I think we were doing the cast reveal with ABC that morning. And she called me, or I called her actually, because I knew she had a doctor's appointment. And all she really said was, it's cancer. And I said, okay, I'll I'm flying home this afternoon anyway. I'll be there as quick as I can. Within a couple of days, that's when we learned that it was pancreatic cancer and not the liver cancer. And she was gone March 25th. So 29 days from diagnosis to death. So, there are some people, they talk about battling cancer and fighting cancer. And she never had a chance. It was so far gone and had spread so much at that point. But what she did on February 24th, when they told her, she came home and she pulled out her laptop. She was on a PC. I'm a Mac person. So she pulled out her heavy laptop and she wrote her obituary that day. Literally the day she was diagnosed.
Did you know she had any plans to do that, or something that she talked about before that she wanted to write her own?
No, she always told me she wanted me to do it. By the nature of
you're the writer.
I'm the writer.
She's the teacher. Probably,
correct.
I mean, obviously a wonderful writer, but
wonderful writer. No,
you're the one.
It was always, oh, you'll do it. Okay. And I would always be like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I didn't know she had done it. So I came home. My brother had flown in town maybe the next day or two. Timing's fuzzy right now, but probably. We're sitting in the kitchen at her home at Orange Park Country Club at the time. And she says, well, I wrote my own obituary. I'm like, I kind of roll my eyes. I'm like, well, of course you did. Why wouldn't you do that? This is so you. And she said, do you want to read it? And I said, absolutely not. There's no way. This I'm still trying to process what's happening. We still don't quite know how severe it is and how quick this is going to happen. We just know she's got cancer. And I think part of me was like, oh, we just go and you do chemo and you do some treatments, and it may be a couple of years of some not fun stuff, but it just never occurred to me that it was going to be that fast.
Like maybe this wasn't the time. Hey, we can do other things now. Focus on other things than an obituary. Yeah.
My dad says, and I'll never forget it, he says, because she's sitting on the sofa and he's standing in the kitchen where I am, and he says, no, you really need to read it. It's New York Times worthy. And I'm like, oh, there's mom again, just being, the showboat. And my dad thinking that it's this amazing thing. And I'm like, I don't know. It's not time for this. We're still dealing with what do we need to do now to kind of stabilize things. So a couple weeks go by and we realize we now know what we're facing. And hospice is called in to help with her pain management at the house. We were very grateful and happy they could do that. Well, being the busy person that I am, I have to fly to Portland, across the country for a conference. And I get a call from my dad and he says, hospice says we need to do inpatient. We can't get the pain under control. Okay. Fine. I get home a couple days later because my mom has said, don't come, I'm good. They're going to get me under control and I'll be back home when you get here. They just wanted a few days to get the pain managed. Spoiler alert, she never left the inpatient hospice. Wow. So I come home, go visit her. Now my brother has come back home again because now we're within probably just 4 or 5 days of her death. This is also just a great scene. Gosh, I love this. I wish we had this on camera. So she's laying in her bed at wonderful hospice facility here in Jacksonville, who are angels. By the way, hospice people, if take anything hospice offers, provides,
and they provide so much that no one talks about.
Oh my, that's a whole other podcast because they truly are angels from top to bottom. Just
agreed.
It cannot, and I would I mean, obviously the one we worked with was great, and I'm sure they all are like that. But she's laying in her bed, and she's coherent, and we're talking, and my dad is standing there, my brother is there, and she says, can I read you my obituary?
And
now,
had you read it at this
no,
point?
I
You just
still
put it
have
away.
not.
You were not
I wanted-
looking at that.
I want zero to do with this. I don't want anything to do with this. Not because I'm necessarily denying that what's happening. It's just not, I just was focused on her care, her feeling, not being in pain, just making sure we were handling the day to day. And she says, can I read it to you? My dad kind of looks at me. My brother is standing, we're on either side of the bed, but at the foot of the bed, my brother is like, no. And I look at him and I'm like, she's dying. Like, your dying mother, and I'm literally saying it like this. Your dying mother just asked if she could read us her obituary. I said, who are you to tell this woman no? We're going to do it. Mom, get it out. She literally reached down. She had taken her laptop to hospice.
Tuck it under the bed.
She did. She took that laptop. She took it out, opened it up, had written it in Word, and started reading it to us. And she read the entire thing, and we laughed where we were supposed to laugh. We cried where we were supposed to cry. And the one regret I have, I think, is that I didn't capture that, either audio or the video of her. Now, I can still hear it in my head. When I read her obituary, I hear every inflection. I hear every giggle. I hear her in it. But I do kind of wish that I had, but I just didn't know it was going to be that good.
Well, and I think that's what a lot of people take away from reading it is they feel that. You can feel her, in not even knowing her, coming through. It's so beautiful and personal, and I can
it really was. And it was I refer to it as sort of a love letter to her family. It was her last love letter to us, certainly, and to her. She included her sisters and her parents, and so it was a beautiful moment there in hospice. Yeah. And I remember looking at my dad and going, dang, that's kind of good. Like, that's pretty cool how that happened. And so then she did pass away.
And he went back to the Times Union and said, can you give me a break, a little price break?
Right. So here's what I didn't, I mean, I kind of knew it, I guess, but you pay for ink, you pay for the space, right?
Yes. And it can get
pricey. Right. So one thing Mom did tell me is she said, if it ever gets reprinted or published, or actually in the obituary, she said, cut nothing. Okay. I don't ever want it to run.
So she told you that.
She said it needed to run in its entirety in the paper. Okay, fine.
Another good point, communication is very key to the whole process. Just communicate
Absolutely.
what you want.
Tell me what you want. So I call I just called the whatever number, whatever on newjacksonville.com, and obituaries, and said, here's what I have. I emailed it. They then emailed back and said, here's how much it will be. I nearly choked because it's a lot of money. I immediately called my dad, got his credit card number, and said, Dad, here's what it's going to cost. He said, okay. We didn't at that point. What are you going to do? Right. So we did, and it ran, I believe, March 31st of 2015 was the publishing date.
And then when did the fun begin?
The next day.
Yeah. So can you find the genesis of it? How it just launched like it did?
I think I can. Yeah. So I knew when it was published in the Times Union, and I knew when I shared it, I knew because of, again, my profession. I have a lot of friends who are reporters, a lot of friends who are assignment editors. I knew it might pick up a little traction just because of who I knew in town. And I say that not to be braggy, but it's just my life.
Right.
So I knew that. April 1st, so the following day, which was also the anniversary of my parents' first date, which was also kind of pretty cool. I'm almost positive that it was a friend of mine, a colleague, who her husband happened to work at the Today Show. And I think she saw it on my Facebook, and it kind of got slid to them. I don't think he even really worked like on the editorial side. I think it might have been even technical. I'm not sure. And I can't remember exactly if that was the very first piece that kind of started it, but it was one of the larger media outlets that did. And then it didn't stop. And it didn't stop for weeks.
And do you have an idea of the scope of how far and wide it traveled and what the reach,
Yeah, I mean, I used to, I do a presentation for PR conferences and things. Initially, it was just about the reach and how things can go viral, and then it's dovetailed into something else because of plagiarism of the obituary, which is a whole other topic.
Right.
That presentation is called "How the World Met My Dead Mother."
Well, that's
which
to
is
the point.
It's to the point.
Yes.
It's pithy. It is what it is. It was just in the millions. I mean, it just was something out of control because it was, certainly you have the Today Show, ABC News, every national outlet. So ABC, NBC, Fox, People Magazine, Cosmopolitan Magazine, Huffington Post, which is how it actually ended up. Pointer is the Huffington Post is sort of how that path happened. The Daily Mail in the UK. But what was really also pretty cool, and this still happens occasionally, my friends around the country would tag me and say, your mom, this is where I start to cry sometimes because it's the one thing that gets me. They say, your mom made it to Phoenix.
Aww.
Your mom made it to Hawaii. Those are... For some reason, that's the thing. That is the thing that gets me every time because she didn't get to visit a lot of those places. She, traveled a little bit, but she's a teacher. My dad was an air traffic controller. We just live our normal little life in Orange Park, Florida. And so seeing that was so cool to see and then to read the comments from people. So I say this, the second greatest gift my mom left me, the obituary was the love letter, certainly number one. Her beauty queen crown might rank up there in the top 5 too, but what she gave me as a PR professional, the Rolodex I suddenly had from producers and editors and media outlets, and it gave me a vehicle to channel some of my energy and the grief and what was I dealing with. I was able to focus on telling her story the way she wanted it to be told. I immediately slipped into PR professional mode. And it was funny. I had, I think it was Inside Edition, maybe. It was Inside Edition and maybe ABC News. They were like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I'm a PR person. Why? They're like, you just seem very buttoned up, because I had high resolution photos in a Dropbox. I had cut lines, captions written for everything. I had photo credits ready to go. Yeah, I had a Word version of the obituary. I had a PDF version. Like, I just immediately did what I would do for a client.
Right.
Which did, I think, help me. It ultimately caused me not to probably process a lot for a long time because I got focused on telling her story her way.
Well, that's also a gift.
It was. It really was. And it just kept going. It took about a month probably for it to finally settle on down. I felt very strongly about trying to respond to as many comments as I could, but it quickly overwhelmed. I mean, when you're talking the Today Show and there were thousands of people. I mean, just thousands of comments.
And then when the plagiarism began, there were people replicating it as their own work all over the world, right?
Yes.
I mean, it kind of took off, and I guess that was another area of focus that you could tend to.
It was. That started. So again, it was a great obituary, fantastic. I think for 2015, I think it was the most read story on Jacksonville.com. At which point I called and I was like, "Can I get a little money back for the clicks you guys got on
kidding.
this? Come on!" And they had a good laugh about it. But of course, I know people there, so it was all in good fun. But the plagiarism was an unexpected. Had no idea. That is a whole other crazy topic, because that one also I feel very strongly about. Again, part of it's my profession. I'm a writer. I have certain professional ethics that I maintain and follow, and plagiarism is high on my list of no-nos. And when the first one happened, I lost my mind. I was beyond angry.
You're protecting her story. That must have felt really personal, that someone was taking a piece of your mom. Like that's something that was her gift to you.
It was her, and that's what I say. That was her last love letter to her family. That was a gift to us. Now, if it inspires someone else to write their own, I think that's amazing. If you want to take that framework and kind of pick it apart and use it, to frame yours, because it was constructed extremely well. Knock yourself out. Have a great time. But I also feel very strongly that everyone has a story.
Yeah.
You tell if you have the opportunity, tell your family member's story. I also do understand that in grief, people sometimes they aren't thinking straight. They're trying to do things quickly. They just know the funeral home says we need an obit. We'll put it. And so they Google, and this is what happened. They Google world's best obituary, funniest obituary, and that's what was happening.
Right.
So then I kind of slid into, well, do I go after them? Do I say something? And I do typically when I see it. I do, because it is copywritten.
Oh,
the minute it was published in the Florida Times Union, copyright exists.
Exactly.
Whether I file for it with the Library of Congress or not, that exists, and I do protect that. My dad doesn't worry about it so much.
Yeah.
He just says, go. My mother.
Yeah, what would she have said?
She would have said, put your big girl panties on and get over it.
Yeah.
But that's flattery, and it's great. But my brother and I feel differently.
Well, do you feel like, obviously there was such a positive global response to it. It really resonated with a lot of people. Do you think that it transformed the way people think about writing obituaries? Because does it make the standard a little more passé? For so long, it's been kind of and I would say kind of before, just up until your mom's sharing what she did, it was more these are the survivors, these are the
right, it was formulaic,
very formulaic,
yes,
and based on column inch count. Like, if you really didn't want to spend that much on it, you just put
right,
time of the service,
the dates, and the survivors. Yeah, and
is that is that this? Do you think that's becoming more of the standard, where you're telling a personal story? And is that something people should think about a little more when they're thinking about their own obituary writing or writing a loved one?
I would hope so. I guess generationally, I think there's some differences. So we're in a time now. You look at doing a podcast. We look at social media. We are chronic oversharers now, right? People share details. I'm guilty like everyone else. You're sharing your pictures of your food. You're sharing your, what happened in the car line, picking up your kids at school. And so I think that ultimately, though, to use the buzzwords, we're our own content creators now, right? Whether you're creating content on Facebook or TikTok or Reddit or wherever you are, you're creating your own content. So why not take that a step further and tell your own story? Now, was she the reason for some global transformation? I think that's a little bit of a leap, but I do know when I go and look at the comments and read them, so many people do comment on, I'm going to do this now. I want my story to be told my way, and so those that do use it as inspiration, I love reading those. And you wouldn't believe the amount of emails I get frequently from people who go, you need to read this obituary.
Yeah.
Because
and have you been called upon? Do people now think Bonnie is the official expert in writing obituaries, even though?
And they'll ask me to write them for their family members, and I go, I didn't write my mother. She wrote it, and she's dead, so we can't really do that. I have written for a few and helped guide them. Again, I think that's just part of the nature of who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
But I think everyone does have a story. And, I think about it and I'm like, I'll never top this. If I write my own, I'm never going to beat my mother's. Mine's just going to be, the irony will be if I copy my mother's. I joke, like, that's what I should do. I should just do hers. Were there any takeaways from your experience that you share with others just about
how to go about writing your obituary, what's important to share, what's well read, what some of the important things are to think about when you're in that mindset?
Well, I think it probably would depend on what mindset the person is in. Are they facing an imminent death? Have they just been given, terrible, awful news? That might color a little bit, probably.
Right.
I don't know that it did necessarily in my mother's. Again, she was a teacher, so she was a good writer to begin with. If someone because your thing, right? What if you write it now and then you lock it away, you put it in your safe deposit box, you forget about it, and you don't die for 25 years?
Yeah.
And now what? Now does the family an addendum? Like, what do you do?
Right.
Like, I think you do have to kind of think that's a not a necessarily super realistic thing, but I just think if people can, if they're writing their own, write it from the heart, write it from the things that mattered to you, because reading my mother's, I now know what those moments were in her life that really meant something to her, whether it was she remembered the smell of the grass, at the elementary school, or she remembered a particular argument she had with her sisters. It doesn't have to be a necessarily positive memory. It can be something. I also love that she used her obituary as one last chance to take a little dig at one of her sisters. But that was very her. But, to express her love for my brother and I, and for her grandchildren. Now, if you're writing it for someone else, which I have done for a few folks, I do ask, certain questions. Tell me their story. Tell me about them. Don't tell me when they were born, when they died, how they died. Like, I can find that anywhere. But tell me some of your favorite memories. Tell me the things that made them laugh, what made them cry. Is there a particular vacation you went on together? Like, again, just trying to get a sense of who people are, because though we may be chronic sort of oversharers, that's very surface level stuff. That's not the real stuff, right? It's like social media is the highlight reel, right?
Exactly.
The highlight
what's
reel.
What's the story? What's the lead? And what can you take from it? And I personally think that obituaries are the last bit of real journalism that there is out there in many venues.
Yeah, they are. And again, I had fascinating conversations with writers and editors at Huffington Post, and then certainly Pointer, and what, if they've kind of curated. And again, as newsrooms disappear, it is. Obituaries are sort of that one thing. I know I used to read them as a kid. Now, again, is that just because that was sort of the environment I was raised in? But they're interesting when they're interesting in history. You're interesting in words that are used and phrases that are used, and you can just learn a whole lot.
Well, I hate to switch gears.
Yeah, switch them
real quick like that, but
you want to know about the death binder?
I want to know about the death binder. In fact, it is a big topic. A lot of people mention the fact that they're going to make sure they have a death binder to just pass off to their child. If something happens to them, that this is where you need to go. This is where everything is. Tell me about your mom's, and how long did she have hers, and what did it include? Okay, so again, teacher, right? So very well organized, binders,
prepared,
a lot of binders,
a lot of office supplies. I think she probably had it for about 10 years in total, and it was a running joke. And it literally was a binder. Nowadays I think you can order a fancy.
So she was thinking about this in her 50s.
Oh yes, yes. Well, she had always also said that if she ever had cancer, she never wanted to do chemo. She didn't want to go through the treatment. Wasn't going to do any of that. That was just not her thing. And so whether it had anything to do with the death binder or not, I don't know. But she just was a preparer. That was what she did. She also, just a side note, not that she was enthralled with Victorian times or something, but she had read somewhere one time that in Victorian days they put a black wreath on the door to so she had made one. She had gone to Michael's for the door. So we'd have one. I'm like,
be ready.
I'm like, we're not.
Your decor would be on fleek, right?
Yes, exactly. Do we still say that? I don't know.
Oh no, that's
I don't know
just an old lady word to use.
Right, that's what we say from 5 years ago.
Sounded cool 5 years ago.
Yeah. So she had this binder, a literal 3-ring binder that had everything in it, from certainly websites and passwords and things to bank accounts, safe deposit boxes, whatever crazy, or QVC, home shopping, like all the things that made her. She had her headstone picked out, what she wanted to say, what photograph she wanted on her headstone. And yes, I said photograph. There is a photograph of my mother on her headstone.
Which one?
Keep in mind, beauty queen, former beauty queen.
Yes.
So she was a little bit about appearances, and she would be the first to tell you she was. But I also did not use that photo. I chose a different photo.
Oh, going against the death binder.
I did not follow death binder on that one because I just didn't like the photo. It was too shopped. It was there were too many filters.
So what ended up on?
It's
on
another lovely photograph.
Yeah.
Around the same age. It wasn't a young picture.
Is it the one of her with the crown?
No, it's not her with the crown, but she's got a pretty flower behind her ear. Yeah. But it was this is the headstone. This is the size. This is where you order it from. This is how much the pricing should be. Printouts again. It's 8 years ago. We're still relatively digital, but she was a printout kind of a person. And when it came time and we started having those conversations, when we realized what we were dealing with, she just like she pulled out the laptop, she pulls out her binder, and we're like, gosh dang it, you were right. Like, I can't believe, again, you can't believe that this is really happening, but okay, let's go through it.
Is that a comfort?
It was. Yeah. Because first off, my dad was able to handle stuff that needed to be handled in a much more efficient way. Mm-hmm. It isn't that he couldn't have done it, because he's a super smart guy and has all his stuff buttoned up too, but he doesn't have a death binder, to my knowledge. I should ask, but I don't think he does. Mm-hmm. But it did make things, there just was a process. So we knew when it came time to order the headstone, this is where we go. Okay, this is what she wanted. And then we have those conversations. One thing I will say, and I tell anybody this who asks, I don't know if it's come up yet or if you've had this experience, bank accounts. Mm-hmm. Having a beneficiary listed on your bank account. She did not have a beneficiary on her bank account, which meant it had to go to probate. We had to go through it. All she had to do was list my dad, me, my brother, and basically, I'm sure it's not this simple, but you kind of just go in with the death certificate, and they're able to liquidate the account much more easily.
Right, but it takes a lot more time.
But when it's in probate. When it goes to probate. So I tell everyone now, that was one of the first things I did. I immediately called my bank. I was like, here's my beneficiary for my bank account. My dad did the same. And my parents are highly educated, prepared people. That little piece got by us.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about this whole preparation for your golden years, or it doesn't have to be an end of life thing, but just when you're preparing for, there's so many of those little details that just don't come up either in conversation or in a book or it's just, so you learn along the way, and so good that you, in your case, or share it with others and make sure people know.
Yeah. But the binder certainly, and it was a running joke for a long time, and then ended up being something that helped kind of simplify the process. It doesn't help with grieving. That doesn't make you feel any better.
Right.
It doesn't solve that problem. But when the time comes to now go, okay, now we have to deal with real life stuff. Let's go through what that is. Now, we were lucky in that we did have some time, and she was able to say, she did this, I remember too. It was within a few days. It might have been that first week. I had been visiting her, and she's like, come on, let's go in my closet. I'm going to start giving you all my stuff. And at that point, I'm still thinking, wait, we don't know. We don't know what's happening yet. Let's hold off. And she was like, nope, I'm going to make sure you have this, and your brother's going to get this, and I'm giving you these clothes, and I want you to have the mink coat, and I want you to do... But it helped her. Yeah. I think it helped her to know that she was, part of the process. Yes. She was making some of those decisions before she became too ill, because those last couple of days she was not able to do that.
Right, and that's control. I mean, that to be planful and to execute your plan, and that's good control.
It was, and we had also, this is before she was sick, gone through the house. She's like, come through the house with me. Tell me what you want. We're gonna put notes on the back of it. You get this, your brother gets that, the kids want this. And it just was, again, death wasn't necessarily anything we were afraid of talking about in my family.
Don't you think that's healthy? And now looking back on it,
I do.
I mean, you were kidding earlier about the Munsters or whatever.
Right.
But
it was,
a smart thing, I think.
Here's the thing. I think as she got older, it became easier to talk about, and she used her sense of humor as a defense mechanism. But long before she was sick, my oldest daughter, who's almost 27 now, will tell you stories about going on picnics in the family cemetery, because my mother would go and she'd get a box of chicken, and she would tell stories about the family that's buried there, because and so my children grew up having picnics in cemeteries like
Doesn't
it's
everybody?
A normal thing. Or you drive by, and I still do it to this day, you drive by a cemetery and we'd say, dead people. That is so weird. Most people don't do that, but that's what we do. Dead people. And I'm so thankful that she raised me and we did that and my kids, because it does take away. Now, to a previous conversation we were having off camera, talking about that desensitization
Yes.
of death.
Yes.
There's probably a line you don't want to cross, maybe.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. And I think...
So I don't know what the right answer is, but...
yeah. But I think looking at it with real conversation, humor normalizes it so that you're not desensitized to it.
Right. It's still awful.
It's awful, but it's normal at some point for everybody.
Everyone.
So here we are.
For everyone. And so, thinking about those 4 weeks or so that we had with her, my brother had flown in town, and we were all sitting at the house, and my brother and father we're ordering pizza, and they can't decide on which pizza. We getting a supreme pizza, whatever pizza, and my mother turns around and says, "I am dying. Do y'all mind? Can y'all someone make a decision and order a pizza, because I literally am dying here." And then we all fell out laughing.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, she kind of is, and let's order a pizza. But you do have to kind of talk about it, and I think my kids hopefully have a healthier opinion of it. It's funny, my husband, we got married about 1.5 years ago and have been together for a while now. But the first time I went to the cemetery, I'm like, gotta go see where my mom's buried, and go. And that was not his family's experience. He did, not his thing.
Yeah, and that's okay, right?
It's okay. Now, he's very good and will come with me, and I don't think he'd have a picnic if I wanted to have a picnic, but he does go with me.
Does he pass now that when he passes by cemeteries, does he say, "Dead people, dead people"?
He will not holler, "Dead people, dead people." I've not gotten that far with him, but it was interesting to me. Someone else's experience was different and was much more, quiet, and things you don't talk about, we don't address.
Well, in closing out a little bit, I'm real interested to hear how you have taken these experiences, both with the death binder and, of course, with your mother's death, and also with the obituary that came from it. How has that changed the way you're going to do things with your family, your 3 kids? Did it change the way you're going to approach this for yourself and your family?
I don't know if it changed the approach. I certainly look to what happened, and will call that out to my children, and either say, do that, don't do that. I didn't like how Nana did that. Yeah. That's not what I want, kind of a thing. But again, it's just part of who we were as a family, and so we talked about it. And there's always a joke, and I think a lot of families make that joke about, well, you'll be sorry when I'm gone, and you're not gonna, there'll be a time when you won't be able to say that to me. But they have asked, talking about the obituary piece and who's writing it, we do joke about that and talk about how that would go, what that would look like. My brother's wife, actually, I just learned this a couple weeks ago when we talked about doing this. I mentioned it to my brother. His wife asked for a death binder for Christmas.
Oh, well, what a gift.
Right? Asked for a death binder. But wait, because now I'm going to call my brother out and go, he didn't buy her one. And I'm like, oh, Scott Phillips, you better go get that woman a death binder, because I think maybe for her it probably did show, and you're not as sheltered and with the conversation.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's changed anything, because it's just our nature and our family. I'm certainly more aware. I think I'm probably more aware of things like passwords, having access, who has access to that. Same for my dad, making sure that, he's in great health, knock on, what this is, 79 now, but making sure he has a path for my brother and I. And his path will look different. He's a very technological guy, so I'm guessing they're in notes on his phone, because he takes all his notes on his phone. But who has access to that information? Who knows where the life insurance policies are? Who knows? And it's more than that too. It's you have a subscription to HBO Max, or you've got the Netflix you need to cancel, or you find out you had 4 Netflix accounts you didn't know about. I think we did have that situation with one of the streaming services at some point.
Going down the list, but you're, the way you've been thinking now, your brain just seems to naturally
it does
go that way.
And I kind of think tactically too. What are the things? I have my mother's desk still, and when I pull open the middle drawer, there are passwords written in there. There's birth dates written in there. She just was a note taker. I think if we could be better note takers, I think that also helps. And I also, this is the sappy part, I love seeing her handwriting.
Yeah.
You know, there's something to that obituary was typed, which was pretty cool. And I have the laptop still. I have the original files. But the handwriting, I'd love to see that come back in some way, because I think we do lose.
I think you don't see it enough. I go back and go through my letters, my grandmother, my mom, my dad, even just handwritten things. It's so meaningful, and when it's typed, it's very clear, but it certainly loses that softness of a handwriting.
Right. And now with all this chat AI stuff,
that's
and the chat
very
GPT,
freaky.
How would that affect now I just thought of that.
I don't even know. I don't know enough about it to even understand. I'm sure the AV guy here could tell us all about how that works, but that is scary and probably will change the way obituaries are written, I would guess.
I would think so too. There was a fascinating segment on CBS Sunday Morning this past week about it. But again, you think through generationally and historically how things change. But I just am a big proponent of people telling their own story. I'm not saying you have to go out and hire a writer to write your life story, but do think about the experiences, the emotion, not the dates, right? It's that, what's the phrase about between the dashes? It's not that, it's not just the born and the death.
Life happens between the dashes.
Yes. But it's the little things. It's, what dogs did you have, and your first love, and your, where you traveled. I think that's what makes all of us who we are. And if we can share those stories, then I think you get a better insight into who the people really, really are. And apparently my mother's someone who would dance naked. If you read the end of hers.
Well, Bonnie, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your mother's story and this insight, because I think that is, I hope that's the trend, that we see more of authentic storytelling happening in obituaries like your mom so beautifully wrote. So thank you for being with us today, and look forward to going back through your mom's story and taking more insight from it. It's great.
I appreciate it, and I'll be glad to talk about my mother anytime.
Yeah.
She was sort of Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher. She was larger than life, and I say she was larger than life even in death. Dang it, she just kept on going, but couldn't be more proud to be her daughter.
Well, thank you for your time tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being with us in this episode, and we look forward to you joining us again for any upcoming episodes. Next time, I think we have up Suzanne Honeycutt, who is the ultimate grand planner and also known as the Queen of Fun, and she'll be with us talking about some of the plans and thoughts that she has on this topic. So you can find it on our Grand Plans Facebook page at My Grand Plans, on Instagram at Grand Plans 2022, and on YouTube, Grand Plans on YouTube. So thanks for being with us.